Dua, Dr. Anjali Nigam, and Professor Sapna Popli. Work-life balance has become a key issue for social and economic policymakers, for employers, and for social researchers in recent years in India as well as in other advanced countries. Employment patterns have been changing rapidly as a result of globalization and because of growing customer expectations in many sectors of economy for a 24/7 service. The nature and intensity of work itself has changed, and traditional spatial and temporal boundaries between home and work have become blurred. Since morning, our discussion has been on women's participation in the paid workforce as one of the most significant social changes of the last century. Women have made noteworthy advances in management, which used to be largely a male preserve. Studies in various countries such as Norway, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and UK monitoring the presence of women in executive positions revealed that the lack of women at the top of large companies is a global phenomenon. Surveys also indicate that gender is still a common barrier for career advancement in many international contexts. It seems that women progression to the senior executive level is blocked by an invisible barrier, so-called glass ceiling. And some organizations have shown greater interest in removing this glass ceiling. Now, the theme for this session is the way forward tools and techniques. This session will delineate a few important measures that an organization can take to make flexi-time work and aim at identifying a blueprint for successful flexi-time options in an organization for the benefit of all its stakeholders. Now, I will invite Dr. Anjali Nigam to open this session. Dr. Anjali Nigam, CEO and Founder Director, White Swan Consulting Group. Previously, she had held prestigious positions in IFTDO 2014, Dubai World Conference and Exhibition, Central Rail Site Warehousing Corporation, Spice Hotspot. She has more than 25 years of rich experience in corporate training, HR systems consulting, university teaching in India as well as in UK. She has developed 7-step organizational effectiveness model. It gives very good results on organizational and employee effectiveness. She specializes in addressing the corporate sector urgent issues such as client retention, employee happiness, team and time synergy, CSR policy and strategy, value-based leadership, women's safety, and gender sensitization. She has been bestowed upon with quite a few awards in the year 2013, such as IFTDO Global HRD Award, Quality Initiative Mission Award 2013, Award of Honor for Outstanding Contribution by ISTD HR Leadership Award 2012. In May 2014, she started her second NEEM school for school dropouts and all other not-so-privileged children at Gata Gaon at Gurgaon. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shivani. Thank you, IILM. It's a great honor and privilege is all mine to be here. You know, when we talk of tools and techniques for unleashing the women potential, I am reminded of my childhood. My father used to tell me, you always have your goals up there, because if you don't have it up there, if you have it somewhere here, you will not reach there. And you know that the school notice board used to have those phrases every morning. And the one which I remember, nothing is impossible in this world. It stuck to my It's stuck in my head. And I learned the auto-suggestion technique, which we all have it and we all use it. The sports people, they use this technique of auto-suggestion, where they break their own records each time. The simple technique of I can. Suggesting to yourself, repeating it to yourself, internalizing it, and culminating it into action. Another technique, if you say, I would not call it a technique here, but it is a mantra for me when I am reminded of Eric Hofer, who talks about it is the learner who inherits the future, while the learned lives in a world that no longer exists. We all know that the world is so dynamic, everything is ever changing. The only constant today is constant change. So in this scenario, what do we do? And especially in this scenario where we talk of gender diversity, we are reminded of, or rather, we need to reflect on the gender differences, as I've been hearing the earlier panelists and wonderful discussions and presentations. My only submission here, because you've had a lot of data on that, especially from Niru, and from other gentlemen from Jabong, the HR head. My only submission and contention: celebrate gender differences. We are all, I think, all organizations today, the industry today, the global scenario today is facilitating gender differences. It may be flexi timing, it can be all kinds of flexibilities, it can be just anything out of the box. But what we are doing is we are facilitating gender differences and we are celebrating that, which is helping us in leveraging gender diversity and leveraging the strengths of each gender. Complementarity, as we've heard earlier panelists also say, is the key and is the boon which we have. So coming together, working together, of course. But what do we do? What are the other keys? What are the other tools? What are the other mantras we can have and we can really unleash the potential we want to? Nothing is impossible. I can. Just go out, just do it. Put your head and heart and soul and intellect and vayu to it and just do it. I studied theology from Diyalbagh in 3 years back. And one thing which I took from it, probably I'm not so intelligent, so I took only one thing out of it. One was the core values of all world religions are the same. Second, the 5 kosh, every human being is made of 5 kosh. That is as per the Tattviya Upanishad. And those 5 kosh, as we should say, are the Annamay kosh, the physical body, the Pranmay kosh, the Vayu, that is the air sheath, the third is the Manomay kosh, that is the Man, Chit, and Vigyanmay kosh, the intellect, and finally the Anandamay kosh, that is the pure self. Now what I did, I was thinking about it, and I've been, for the last 4 years, I've been teaching my MBA students to develop an approach of nurturing the whole human being. It can lead to such a lot of employee satisfaction, leading to retention, of course leading to high performance, and culminating into very high, the ROIs as we call them. So what are we doing here is, we are trying to understand what the individual, if I talk about myself, any change, any development starts from me. So what I do, I'm made of 5 kosh. So I have physical body, I have Vayu sheath, I have Man, I have Chit, I have Vigyan, my kosh, and the Anand, my pure self. So what do? As Stephen Covey says, you can also have daily goals. Simple technique, smart goal, make 1 goal at least for each kosh. Just go out, nurture it, and see the difference in you. There is potential You don't need to unleash it. You will be creating potential. Believe me. And that is again, that is at the individual level. And if we kind of invert it for the organization, or we use it for the organizational purpose, it's the same thing. We are helping organizations to retain their employees, to increase the happiness quotient at workplace through this technology, this terminology. Now, Stephen Covey talked about integrating the body, mind, and soul. I suggested this year at IFTTO 2014 integration of body, mind, vayu, intellect, and the pure spirit, and just see the difference. And they accepted this, so I'm happy about that, because they said there's nothing beyond this, because that's what we're made of. And if we nurture at all the 5 aspects and all, at the all levels, it has to result in holistic potential, which will lead to more power to me. I'm more empowered. More power to me, more power to the organization, more power to the family, more power to the society I live in, and definitely more power to the universe. Do you agree with this? Or is it just theory, sounding theory? It's absolute practice. I can't speak otherwise. I can only speak on what we experiment with, what we develop, and that's what we bring. I bring at least to the table. Now, there's another one technique which I have kind of experimented with for the last 8 years, which helps me to coach the mind. Now that will help you. I'll just take you through for 2 minutes through that technique, which is a visualization technique. You must be knowing it. Very, very simple technique. But that will help you. That helps me at least to coach my mind, to take it where I want to take it. And if I want, the way I want to nurture my koshas, I can actually plan it. I can actually see myself doing it, and actually then make it happen, culminate it into action through a smart goal. So I would request you to just close your eyes. Relax in your chairs. Open your hands and your feet. Sit in a most comfortable position in which you can sit for 3 minutes. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and slowly exhale. When you take that deep breath, you feel so nice. When you exhale, see with the eyes of your brain all the stress, tension, anxiety, pain leaving your body. And when you inhale again, take a deep breath, see with the eyes of your brain the positive energy entering you, the white light, happiness spreading to all parts of your body. Inhale deeply once again and feel the happiness spreading. Feel the lightness. Enjoy the peace within you. Go to the room of your brain. It's absolutely white and shining with 4 walls. Nobody's there except you. Peace, happiness, and the person you love the most or pray to is sitting there. Sit down on the cool floor, take off your shoes. Take a deep breath. The person you love the most or pray to is sitting there, looking at you. His divine energy entering you. Feel it. Take it in with a deep breath. You feel empowered. You feel happy. You feel light and divine love. There is a whiteboard outside the room of your brain. So much is written on it. Something's good, something's bad. Probably a lot of things which you don't want there to be. of your personal life, professional life, social life. Take a duster with the hands of your brain and rub it out, especially those things which you don't want them to be there, to the best of your ability. Clean it. It's white and shining, except for a few things which you want them to be there, which are good, and you want them not to be rubbed off. All the baggage gone, you're feeling so light. Take a deep breath. Now you can write on that whiteboard. What is that which you want to implement from today to feel more empowered? It can be brotherhood, it can be compassion, it can be empathy, just pure love, selfless seva, anything. Take a deep breath again. You're so light, you're almost like a speck of dust. Go back to the room of your brain, take the divine energy, come back to this room. Feel your feet on the ground and slowly open your eyes. How many of you could do it? Put your hands up, real confident. Good. Okay, so good and bad both. Probably feedback could be there, but you know, what is one feedback? Yes, ma'am? How did you feel? Very relaxing. Okay, somebody else from this side? Yeah? Wow, you left, you were not here. That's good. Sir, from in the front, you said you could do it. So what is your...
I felt light.
You felt light. Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. In fact, I've used this technique on people from almost all parts of the world. And the results have always been this. Now, this is the bottom line objective. The same way, this technique can be leveraged for addressing any of these. I mean, Neeru was talking about relationships, because everything starts with that. Now, when you can see yourself leveraging those. You can see yourself, you can visualize removing those barriers. You can actually see yourself activating that and just do it. Nothing is between you and the actual action. Why? Because, there is simple management concept called my zone of concern and my zone of influence. What do I do when I operate in my zone of concern? I'm concerned about the pollution, I'm concerned about the traffic, I'm concerned about people, how they talk, how they dress, the people, Nirbhay, Badayu, I'm concerned, I'm really concerned. I could cry now. But does it help me? Am I unleashing my potential? No. So I need to bring it, every concern which I have, I need to just bring it into my area of influence. And I just start taking that small action, which will make me empowered. For example, if you are concerned about how that HOD is treating the juniors, I'm giving you a very live example. We all are concerned about that. At times, we see these kind of scenarios in almost all the organizations. What do? I bring it into my area of influence and I treat my staff and the people with utmost respect and the way I want to be treated. So do unto others as you want others to do unto you. As simple as that mantra of operating in my area of influence, unleashing my potential, and it's all there out for me. You agree with this? Can you do that? It will change. It has changed lives. It has. Because it's so simple, it is absolutely practical. You can operate at your workplace, you can operate it at your family, with your children, with your spouses, with your mothers, parents, friends, relatives, nationally, internationally, wherever you are. I'm sure मैं आपको बहुत सारा बोर कर दिया है, so I am sorry. Well, I'll just take 2 more minutes, ma'am. Can I? Sorry. I'll just give you one example of our case study, how we brought that concern which we had after Nirbhay, how we started operating in our area of influence, how we brought that concern of Nirbhay into our area of influence. After Nirbhay, I'm sure most of us could not, probably think right, straight, and sleep for a few nights. Probably it affected all of us. I created a group of feeling citizens. We had bureaucrats, we had academicians, we had movie makers, we had media, we had students from IITs, we had students from colleges like yours, and we had housewives. And we had rounds of discussions, and what we did was, see, I'm talking about unleashing our potential. So we're not losing track, we're just going right on track, and just, pick out those, whatever you feel like, otherwise throw them out of the window. And we created that group, and after rounds of discussions, we realized that the value gaps were a very major reason behind these kind of incidents. We created a jingle for ourselves. My professor, she helped us, and we did that. Nirbhay ho, nirbhay hi raho, Rajpat na sahi pagdandi banao. Is it unleashing my potential? Yes, it will. Now what we did was, we took a 3-pronged approach. We identified one, कि जो psychologies, जो mindsets, जो psyches बन गए हैं, उनसे how should we protect our women and children. So we encouraged the students, IITians and others, to divert their ideas and energies into innovating technical innovations for women and child safety. In 1.5 months, we had 9 innovations. Then the second pronged approach was, अब हम ये जो value gaps जो हैं, इस पे हम किस प्रकार से educate या sensitize करें लोगों को, so that each one of us becomes a value multiplier. And each one of us becomes a lighthouse of values. So we started doing these seminars and workshops. So that each one of us, the first we started was with an international seminar at IIT Delhi. And we, people without charging us, they came from UK and US. I mean, that's apart from that. But third pronged approach was value workshops, because we had to, inject the value gene in the next generation. Because just protecting myself is not doing the job. Because my children and my children's children would probably, what will they see if we are seeing बदायूं? अगर हम बदायूं और निर्भय देख रहे हैं, तो हमारे पोटेंशियल का क्या फायदा? तो उसमें फिर हम लोगों ने value workshops, value education and good citizenship for children under neem trees, which we call neem schools, for 2 hours in the morning before our office. And we started this, and we use IB methodology. Simple experiential learning techniques. There are no books. We drive through the children. It can be through street plays, it can be through storytelling, 5 process, very simple storytelling processes which we've developed ourselves. And in 1.5 months, हमने भी बचपन में ऐसे किया. जब हम उनको चॉकलेट देते थे तो वो छुपा लेते थे, हमको नहीं मिला. हमने भी ऐसे किया है ना. फिर वो 1.5 महीने में, लेकिन उन बच्चों में क्या फर्क आया? मैडम, हमको मिल गया, उसको नहीं मिला. The second mindset which we changed, the paradigm shift, what happened was, in the same society, I had started the first school in Delhi in New Moti Bagh, where all the bureaucrats, the defense secretary and the first secretary to Prime Minister of India lives. We were lucky to be there because my husband is also additional secretary. So we were there, and we started this school under the neem tree for those construction workers, children who were not going to school, and a lot of children who were in school but they were not going. So then वो जो लोग वहां रहते थे, वो मुझे कहते थे, अंजलि तुमने यहाँ पे इनका स्कूल शुरू कर दे, हमारी तो बड़ी कीमती गाड़ियां खड़ी होती हैं, कुछ चुरा लेंगे तो. This is we. So we are responsible. What did we do? In 3 months, I would, बहुत ठंड पड़ रही थी. So we closed the school for 3 days. And I started getting calls from the same residents, the same wives. अंजलि, अब बच्चे नहीं आए आज, आवाज नहीं आ रही. We had those wives joined us as volunteers, IAS officers' wives. We had those children who had done CANT, हमारे पास अभी time है. We had Rockland Hospital joining us as for camps. We had eye hospitals. We had people from Mauritius, from France coming to us as, you just take that one small step and believe me, you create potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali, for sharing beautiful points, beautiful thoughts. So, Dr. Anjali has shared her viewpoints to unleash women's potential. First and most important thing is nothing is impossible. And auto-suggestion techniques, definitely it will play a vital role if we want to explore our potential. We have to come together and work together if we want to have success in our life and we want to explore our potential. And integration of mind, body and soul is very much required. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now we have second speaker on the panel, Ms. Sonali Dua. She is Vice President, Deloitte US Consulting. Ms. Sonali Dua heads brand eminence and client relations for Deloitte Consulting in India, working closely with global, US and India leadership. Ms. Sonali leads by example through championing collaboration by enhancing outreach of Deloitte brand, thought leadership, research and subject matter expertise to clients, talent and industry fraternity. Ms. Sonali Dua specializes in setting up firm initiatives, diversity, corporate social responsibility, people initiatives, critical for building and sustainable inclusive culture in an organization. Ms. Sonali has 18 years of work experience and has been part of growth stories of GE Capital and Dell International in India prior to joining Deloitte in 2005. She has a strong background in setting up new operations, driving operational efficiency, leading large programs within and across the member firms. In her previous role, she was leader for community involvement, diversity and employee engagement and had set up robust programs for year-round engagement for over 15,000 professionals across India. Ms. Sonali is a commerce graduate from Delhi University and postgraduate in operations from Symbiosis University, Pune. She is a certified deep sea scuba diver and has trekked across high altitude passes of Ladakh and is an avid believer of experience everything once in the lifetime. So we welcome you, ma'am.
I didn't realize you were going to recite the whole introduction. I'm feeling actually embarrassed. But thank you. But thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. It's hard. What I'll tell you is what has actually gone in these 18 years for me to get here. I think that's what you guys would be interested in. Is that right? Yes. Yeah? Yes. You first have to help me with words or policies or programs you haven't heard during the day. Because I think by the end of the session, you almost have heard it all. So I don't know what you haven't heard of. So if there's any one thing that's left or two things that you've left, you can point it out right now so that I can definitely make sure that I touch upon it during my 10 minutes. Is there anything that's left? One thing that you're really, really curious about. Be open, please. That's one thing you have to learn to be. Be open and raise your hand. Nothing? Have we covered it all? Really? And how many times have you been practicing Anjali's trick of just closing your eye or just keeping your eyes open but just being in your own nirvana state? It's going to really help you a lot. I can tell you this. That is one thing that I do, Anjali. I have started shutting off so often that it's unbelievable. And I think that's required for us to remain on a very buoyant stage. You know, I learned buoyancy when I've been doing diving. You have to just exhale it all out to be able to sink in the sea. If you have tiny bit of air in your stomach, you will rise up to the top. Okay, and then obviously there are chances that boat may hit you or something like that. But you have to sink like 20 meters down, and the only way you can do that is to just blow out all the air in your tummy. And then you sink like this. But then, when you regain your buoyancy and you swim and you see the ocean, it's wonderful. So I think that's a wonderful tip that you're giving them, which will help you immensely as you strive in your career. How I started my journey had been very, very random. And unlike my journey, I'm sure your journey is going to be very nice and very comfortable. You're starting with a great college, first of all. I hear from Rahul that you have about 60-70 colleges coming here to hire. So you already set for a journey which is going to be pretty good. How I started was through a very, very early startup. I even started with a hotel because I just wanted to do a summer job. But when I did that for 3 months, when I went for my first interview, I got hired as a PR manager because the person thought that I come from an hospitality background. And I'd only done 3 months of internship, and I hated it because I thought the hotel is going to be that one wonderful career that you can take up. But being in that industry, I realized that is not what I was made of. But it got me my first job. And when I was in that first job, the most loveliest thing that happened to me was I was working with 2 people who were very set entrepreneurs, giving me all the independence to set my own road, to start a new operations. And I had all the independence to do it. I was almost a partner in the firm. But after 3 years of working that mundane life of marketing and PR and setting up operations, we were all over the newspaper because we were setting up something that was unheard of in India in 1996. But after 3 years, I said, listen, you know what? I'm burning out going from Vasant Vihar to that part of Delhi. So how about I leave early on few days, like 3 o'clock, so that I can get home in time. And how about I leave late on a couple of days? I don't mind leaving at 8 or 9 o'clock because by then the traffic is ended. And I could leave at 9 and reach at 10. So that is, I'm compensating my 40-45 hours that I need to do in a week. Is that okay? They said, okay, yeah, that's okay. But then after a month, it wasn't okay with them. And that was my reason to leave. Okay, I said, okay, listen, you can't do it. And I can't be sitting in a, at that time in a chartered bus for like 3 hours trying to get back home. And obviously at that time, you don't get paid that much that you can choose to live next to the office. So I left them. And then G hired me. They hired me because they thought that I was coming with that background that I could add value to their services. So it always happened by chance. And it always happened by people who know me, who know my strengths. So one tip from me to you guys is to form your network. When you meet somebody, be as authentic as you can, because when you are authentic, you connect with another authentic person. And that link not just helps you in that stage of your career, but helps you for your lifetime. I am in touch with all the people who I have interacted and been able to connect with. And that had been the support of my career. And that's very important for you also to build it. Don't just say hi, hello, meet them and forget them. If you're able to connect with somebody, connect. Because that person is going to pull you along. And when there are others in your career who are going to pull you down, those are the people whose constant support and guidance and mentorship is going to pull you up. And that is, I think, to me, has been a golden key to my career. Because there were so many times, and this is the second term that I'll use maybe that you haven't heard during the day, is a career limiting move. How many have you heard CLM? It's not one of those management terms, it's one of those corporate terms, which is when you take a panga, right? Which most of us smart people can afford to do every single day. And I am expert in it, and I don't care. So when you do that, you have to have those people who sort of back you up and say, you did the right thing, and it's all right for you to say what you said. Okay? So you have to say the truth, and you have to seek the truth. If you meet people who are not like-minded, who do not give you the respect that you deserve as a professional, I think the companies have policies and people to support you. I'll give you one example from my GE days. I stayed with GE for about 4 years. And in one particular role, I was just being flipped around like this. Okay? The person would say, you know what, you're leaving at 6, I can't meet you right now, why don't you wait till 8 o'clock, I'll meet you. I'm like, 8 o'clock in Gurgaon. First of all, I had to fight my entire family and my extended khandan to work in Gurgaon because I was in Delhi. And Gurgaon at that time in 2000, even didn't have a DDC bus going. You know, I don't know how many of you have been there. 2000 Gurgaon was a no man's land. Okay? And for somebody to ask me to wait so that, you know, they could meet me, and I was like, you know what, why don't we meet tomorrow? So I did that a couple of times, saying what I wanted to say, and say, you know what, it won't work out for me. And that guy started flipping my shifts like anything. So we were working 24/7 at that time. So he'd put me in a morning shift, and then he'd put me at the night shift, he'd put me in the evening shift, and I'm like, hold on a second, I'm not able to cope up with it. 1 week you put me here, 1 week you put me there. Why don't you give me some stability so that I also have a family, I also have a life? And he gave me one warning, he gave me one almost 10 rating and whatever. I was like, this is random. And I had all those files of email. I just sent it to the HR and the legal head. And I said, I think this person is not, you know, professionally behaving with me. I think I need some support. I'm too junior in the chain to be able to, you know, fight it out myself, and I think I need the support. I was prepared. They're just gonna say, go, leave. You know, because I'm fighting with the VP at that time and I'm hardly a consultant. You know, but they opened the emails and I looked at the emails and I said, yes, that's indeed what's happening. Every second day he's changing my role, he's changing my shift, he's giving me multiple messaging about good behavior, wrong behavior, warnings. What's happening? So they put me on to another person who was an excellent guy because he was into the company to clean the company, and I love cleaning. So, so that was the best part of my career, I would say. For 3 years, I did Six Sigma, I did process efficiency. We were hiring 2,000 people in a go, and we were looking at everything from the base level as to how we could do it, because we had no process to look up to. Right now, we have so much best practice sharing. Back in 2000, 2002, there was nothing happening. We were thinking about it, and we couldn't even look up to US at that time because even US didn't know what they were doing by outsourcing it to India. So we were figuring it out ourselves, and it was great fun. 2004, I think, I applied for a job because I was like, okay, enough. Somebody rejected me. The other day, I'm sitting with another new hire who's to take care of the Jaipur facility. And he says, why are you here in this role? You could be doing something more. And I was like, you know what? I applied for a job and they won't take me in. So I think I got a bad reference. He was the same guy who had rejected me, not even knowing me, but through a connection that he knew. So it's all networked, okay? After some time, it's hard to believe, but it's all so badly networked that all the hirings and all the firings happen because people heard something about you, people heard something good about you, they hired you, people heard something bad about you, they fired you. Okay? So you have to work a lot around the perception, and that's the hard way that I learned. The perception is the most important thing that you need to be able to manage as you grow in your professional career. So what happened? That person left G. I made good friends with him. We became very good colleagues for years. Then he moved to Dell. He asked me to join. I joined him. For a year, we were setting up facilities there, we were setting up facilities in Chandigarh, and then Deloitte happened in 2005. And then I joined Deloitte. I had figured it out that, you know, G, Dell, Deloitte, the companies are the same, the infrastructure is the same, it's the people who you work with, it's the role that you're doing, it's you are enjoying, it's what's motivating you to work every day. You've heard it multiple times, you know, you don't leave the organization, you leave the people you work with, and it is so damn true because you can dip into frustration the very moment you have a bad interaction, and the first thing you want to do is, let's quit because the market is hot, right? You can change second day. But what if you were to stay, what if you were to look at another opportunity within the organization for you to succeed? I think that's the only thing that makes you stretch your career to the 10 years that I stretched here. It's not that it's always going to be rosy. It's going to be like driving a car. How many of you drive a car? You know how it is driving a car, right? You're in control of your own career. You brake when you see a risk. You accelerate when you see a clear road. Okay? You get into a bump. You got into a bump because of your own mistake. You oversaw what was coming ahead. Right? So that it's exactly like driving your car. You're in control of yourself. And you have to steer it the right way. The better you steer it, the faster it is that you'll reach your destination. And there is there is no assured promotion or an assured status when you reach that level. I think it's at this level that I'm struggling to keep myself challenged. Okay, I'm at the best of my job, I'm fully networked in the organization, I have realized my potential, but I'm not being challenged. So that is how every professional at every stage, I guess, even the faculty, even as a student, you need to always evolve yourself to understand what is it that gives you that trigger, what is it that gives you that challenge to steer ahead. Every time a women professional comes to me and says, I can't do this, or I'm not being given a chance to do this, and I said, have you asked? And more often than not, what I hear is they're not. If you don't even ask, how are you going to ever receive it? You're getting into maternity, you want to work from home, you haven't convinced your bosses. How are you ever going to make this thing work? Right? When I moved, I was in Hyderabad for about 5 years. When I was to have a baby, I just decided I have to move to Delhi. And my boss told me, the role that you're doing, the whole diversity community, and I was like a big person there because I was managing it for 15,000 people at that time. We are now 25,000 people. But he said, Delhi, we don't even have an office. How are you ever going to manage the strategic role from Delhi? We'll have to look for something else for you. So it's like, fine. But who rolled up their sleeves? My mentors. They said, if we can move work from US to India, it doesn't matter where in India you work from. So we're going to find a role for you. And before I could have those sleepless nights during the maternity, I had a role which was to work with consulting and to identify this India role where we were thinking of, really re-strategizing our consulting presence in India, working with our clients in India, working with our talent practice in India to see what we could do differently to be more visible in India. It would not have happened if I hadn't asked. Right? Even I'll say, so every time you have to do is you have to make your own decisions and you have to stick to them. You have to decide what matters to you, you have to decide what does not matter to you. A month ago I was offered a project which would have changed my life. But it would have kept me in Mumbai 5 days a week for the rest of my 2 years. It was so hard for me to say no to that. But I said a no because it meant that I would be away from my family, away from my son, and almost on the airport, almost all nights at the hotel. Did I want that as a career? No. Did it hurt me? Yes. Will it impact me in my career? Yes, maybe. But is it important for me? No. So you have to decide what's important for you. There's this very interesting book that I read recently, and I'm sure you must have all heard of it, but if you haven't got a copy yourself, get it. It's Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Have you seen that book? Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. She is so open and truthful about what women need to do to rise in their career. I think everybody deserves a copy of it because as I read it, as I turn the pages, I can so see that same exact stuff either happen to me or with my colleagues around. It's very easy for us to say, it's not worth it, let's just stay at home, right? The generation before us made that easy choice. But were they empowered? Were they financially independent? Were they making the decisions? Yes, maybe. Our moms were pretty stern about a lot of things. But today, it's whole different. I can't imagine my life if I hadn't chosen the right partner, right? If I'm here today, he's picking up my, not my son, our son. If I'm traveling, he's not traveling. If he's traveling, I'm not traveling, right? If he's taking a high travel job, I turn down my travel plans. So we have to equally play it together. But the pleasure that we have of having a career together and a happy family is unmatched. And I wish all of you guys that whole recipe. Because there's another thing that I read in this Sheryl's book is there a secret? No, there's no secret. You just do good what you know you can do good and you will meet the success very soon. So all the best with that. I'll leave you guys with that thought and really hoping that it will really help you out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sonali, for sharing your personal experiences. I'm sure it will definitely inspire our students. And I really liked it. Yes, you need to be authentic, and automatically you will be connected with an authentic person. And mentoring, connection is very important, and mentoring plays a vital role, and at ILM we all are practicing to be a good mentor. Now I would like to invite Ms. Harpreet Datta on the stage. She is a Vice President HR and Administration at SMS CMAC. She has previously worked with Fortis Health World, Relia Wellness Limited, retail business, the Energy and Resources Institute, which was previously known as Tata Energy Research Institute. She is a successful professional with 18 years of diverse industry experiences in the area of human resource management, broadly, talent acquisition and management, compensation and benefits, HR policies and guidelines, performance management, reward and recognition, career planning, HR budgets and management, organizational development, HRMS and training development and management of change. She is proficient in conceptualizing, strategizing, and planning HR matters related to business with demonstrated success in effective implementations. We welcome you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. You've had a long day, hearing a lot about women empowerment. And where are the men in this room? Conspicuous by their absence. Yeah, but I think they equally need to understand, because we partner in this world of men and women and in organizations. So I wish, honestly, I had more of your male colleagues here, but if not, please convey the message that we are partners in business, partners in life, and we seek their understanding, whether as bosses, as husbands, as father-in-laws, brother-in-laws, whatever relationships that we have. Because I would like to start by saying that I'm here because of my family. I'm here because of my bosses. I'm here because of all the men in my life who have stood by me and supported me. Apart from, of course, my women colleagues, who stand by, we share a natural empathy towards each other, because the journey by and large is very similar. So you have a choice. You can either ask me to talk about what organizations do for women employees. You will hear the same list of wanting to know flexi working hours, work from home. What else? What are the other interventions that organizations have? Yeah? Okay, what else? What else? What else? Extended maternity leaves? Yeah, sabbaticals. What else? I mean, it's by and large, it ends up being the same. I think it's a finite list. And but the struggle at the corporate level to ensure that we get participation from women and full participation from women has always been there. I personally think, and I would, is that it's a two-way traffic. I would differ with Sonali on this point that the women of the previous generation took it easier. I really don't think so. I think they had a full-fledged job on hand, and they did fair amount of justice to their roles. It's just that the roles that we are performing today are different from what they are. And I sort of agree with her when she says that 15 years back there was not so much of a buzz about women being in employment. There was not a focus on, when we enter the market about what sort of policies should a company have to encourage inclusiveness of women at workplace. I don't think anyone ever talked about it. It was almost, if you're good enough, you get in. If you are good enough, you survive the system. If you're good enough, then you make your way through. And I'm happy and I'm proud to belong to that bunch of women who have gone up the ladder despite not having had separate special privileges. Okay, and I stand by and salute the ladies, or like Indra Nuis, or so many others that we have who have grown up the ladder without having special policies and framework structure to them. So, my basic contention to everyone out here is, you need to stop and think whether you really need organizations to adapt. Yes, organizations do need to adapt, but is there something in our own mindsets that limits us? You have to ask this question of yourself. How badly do you want to be successful? Or how badly do you want to be a career-oriented person? So I think it's perfectly alright to have a choice to say, I want to be a homemaker. I think it's perfectly alright. Equally, is it alright to say, oh, I want a career to have a pocket money, but you know what, that's it, and I'm not struggling up the pathway. It's perfectly alright. And I think it's also equally perfectly alright for you to say, no, there, I want that job and I want to be there and I want to make a difference and I want to, you know, have my career aspirations fulfilled. But what I mean by all of this is, the choice is yours. You need to be clear more and more as women, professionals who get in. What is it that you want at the end of the day? Do you want pocket money? Do you want a position? Do you want assignments? What is it that you want out of it? And then create your pathway accordingly. And this whole thing about this job, you know, ceiling, glass ceiling we talked about? Have you always we've spoken about it, I'm sure, since morning? Is it real or not real? Is it real or not real? What do you think? Not real? Yes or no? It's there? You think there are people sitting in organizations saying, oh, she's a woman, we need to whack her and make sure she doesn't grow. Yes or no? No. Some response, guys. It's very difficult to carry on like this. Yes or no? Do you think there are people sitting in corporates, organization, you know, men particularly, sorry for all you gentlemen sitting here, but men sitting there and saying, oh, there's a woman who's growing and doing well and we need to make sure she doesn't grow because she is a threat to all of us and our sovereignty. Do you think that's the way they think? Yes or no? No. Okay, all the yeses up. Yes. They think so. You think men think so? Yes. Okay, I have an audience which thinks it. And how many of you think that men or anyone sitting on the boards or institutions don't think so? They just look at. Okay, I'm relieved. We have more on this side. I was almost beginning to dread that you'd have people saying no. It's a lot of people sitting there not. But to the first group, I'm sure you have your reasons for that view that you carry. But why would somebody not want you to grow? They're threatened. Why? If you're a woman, are you more threatening to them? You are? What?
They are.
They feel threatened.
Yes, they are. You're far more competent than they are. And they prove it day in, day out. And they know it. So therefore, in a position where they do not want you to, for some reason or the other, they don't want you to grow. And most of the time, these guys are in the senior positions. They come with a very old mindset.
Okay? Anybody else who endorses this view or has to add something to this thought process?
I definitely feel few people are definitely very opinionated about them. I face that myself. Like, I think the only way to bypass that is to ignore and keep doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And even just spread the buck forward. Like, you don't need such people.
Sure, and those of you who think that actually you have a fairly conducive environment and and it's you who makes that final decision. Any one of you have a view on that and would like to express that?
I guess it depends on the environment in which you are raised.
Okay.
So my mother, she was working as a manager in a financial firm. So I've seen her succeed. So to me, all the ladies, I don't find an issue in that. So I guess it depends on your experiences also.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly the reason why I'm missing all the men folk in this room is because there's appreciation that we're not in a man versus woman race out there. There is, actually you need to partner. It's undisputable. Yeah, you can have opinionated people, but then don't you have a Sas Bahu and a Sas being very opinionated about a Bahu? Isn't that also being opinionated?
Only on color,
Pardon?
Only on colors, HP.
Okay. Maybe some people also experience it in life. I'm sure you talk to some women folk here, they will say, no, they have an opinionated mother-in-law. Sure, a daughter-in-law could equally be opinionated about her, mother-in-law. So the point that I'm trying to raise is, yes, you would have opinionated people in your career. They could be men, they could be women bosses themselves because they feel threatened by your success. So opinions can happen anywhere. Yes, gender is one of the types of opinions. Okay? And then I somewhere believe that we make the choice whether we let that opinion of others cloud our thought process. Or I can be clear-headed enough to say, listen guys, or gentle lady, or whatever over there, please, this is my career path, I want to work at it. If I'm competent enough, I'm going to make it. Yeah, and I can assure you the struggle is there. I don't know who else has spoken so far in the day, but I only know that to prove your worth, your salt, or to prove yourself, for people to recognize that you know what you do, you really need to work hard. And I think somewhere it goes for all men too. Right? You really need to know your subject. You need to know it enough to be able to stand up in front of people and say, you know what, I think none of you are right in your own ways, but the point that I'm putting across is equally relevant, and I think we need to talk about it. I mean, the conviction to do that. And I think that comes in from, honestly, from some decent, honest work that we do with ourselves. Whichever sphere you're in, you could be in finance, you can be in marketing, HR, whichever line you pick up, you could be a beautician for all I care. But as long as you clear with your subject, I think people are going to hear you. So that's undisputable. The other thing is, I think also this whole, as I said, women themselves need to, I have equally, the panel will agree with me, have met women who want favors. That's a real put-off, whether you're a male boss or a woman boss. Just because you're a woman, you can't every second day come into me and say, oh, I need an off today. Oh, you know what, something is not all right. Just expecting that the organization should bend backward for you. Be reasonable in your demands. People are going to listen to you. But if you use your woman card as a card that you're going to put up every time, it just doesn't work, because then you're not showing professional competence. You're not showing professional commitment to your job. So after a point, I think there is this women and men and this whole gender issue sort of blurs out. You will off and on face it by people who are opinionated in your environment. You will just need to learn to tackle them and move on in life. Or you spend the rest of your life, for the rest of 1 year or 2 years on the job, addressing all your concerns towards that person who's opinionated, or trying to adjust to his or her opinions. It's not needed. Sometimes you just can ignore and move on. Yeah? And I was just wondering, this whole thing about, we spoke about Indira Nooyi today?
No.
You didn't. She said something very, very, very interesting and very relevant recently. Anybody knows what she said? Yeah, tell me.
Leave your CEO ego in the garage. Wasn't that?
Okay, that's one. And she said one particularly, which caused a lot of women, attention, and all of them have been having views on it, and there have been men who are jumping into that pool. So what did she say?
Women can't have it all.
Yeah, brilliant. And why did she say that? What was rational? How did she conclude that? She said something more beyond that. Basically what she said was that, and mind you, she is a woman professional, Forbes' 13th ranked most powerful woman in the world, married, has an extremely successful career to talk about, has, I guess, enough money to have most of her wishes fulfilled, is married, has 2 children. A woman like her makes a public statement in an interview, and that was an Aspen, Ideas Festival. She's made the statement saying that women can't have it all. And why can't they have it all? She says basically their professional aspirations and their biological clocks work in different directions. Can you beat that statement? And all of you there, at a time when men are concentrating, they get into a career at the age of 22, 23, 24, and they're focusing on their jobs, is when women are actually getting married. And I see so many of my colleagues having to relocate, or remove their jobs, or move. It's a transplantation in a woman's life, right? And she moves to another physical location, by which she has to sometimes let go of a present job. Okay, and that's when men are strengthening the foothold there. They're just entering and making sure they're rooting in well. Yeah, and a few years down, or 2-3 years down, when you actually be supposed to be showing your performance and your capabilities, is when the women need to have a biological timeout for childbirth. If one was good enough, but you have one and then you come back and you're struggling to find your way through, And then you have another one, because that's what our societal norms are. 2 children is like an acceptable thing, and most people end up having that. She goes for another time out, and then she comes in. By that time, she's completely lost ground. At least most of us have. Right? And your male colleagues, oh, they're just lucky, you know. Sometimes some people have it all. Yeah? They have already made their positions sound, because they have not, thankfully, had many distractions, excepting for some paternity leaves that they go through. Yeah? And they're back to work, and they're at work. There's nothing about being back to work. Yeah? And there, now already you are at even if you started out as being equally competent, or equally proficient with what you did, or equally even committed, you're still behind time. But for no fault of yours. Right? And by that time, the organization has decided, or some people in the, or opinionated people in the organization have decided that you put your family before your work, and hence you may not be as committed as you say you are, and then there the whole game is off. And then you struggle to find your identity back. All I'm saying, you can do it a little more intelligently. Again, referring to, because Sonali was the only person I heard. Yeah, build your support system. She talked about networking in organization, and I'm talking about something equally important. Build your support systems in your families. That was my learning.
At every stage, every parent.
No, at every stage. I think, you know, can I talk about something which many youngsters may not agree to? It may just be a point of view you may want to know. Okay, you get married, you go into your in-laws' house. General समाज कहता है कि सास ऐसे होती है, ससुर जी ऐसे होते हैं, blah blah blah. Already they have contaminated your head. You've watched enough of colors, as someone said, and you're anyway further contaminated in your head. And then you go into a married life, and then you say, oh my God, 10, 15 days. Of course, it requires adjustment, right? If you took the analogy I would draw is a paddy, right? The paddy, the rice is growing, and then what do? You take it, and it is transplanted, right? Do you think that rice struggles to find roots? So women are like rice. Women are like paddy. You get transplanted, you move out, you put in some other ground. It takes time for you to find root. Can we have the patience to find root? Can we work out our relationships? Because believe me, despite all what your professional colleagues can help you, what support you can get from your family members or your extended family members, something you cannot even estimate. I stand here again, one, as I said, because of the men in my life. I equally stand here because of an amazingly supporting mother-in-law, who was a homemaker, who had never seen anything of a college, who had never seen anything of an organization life. She just knew that her daughter-in-law had something in her. She wanted to do something, and she stood by me. So, this support system, so add networking professionally from what Sonali says, and add, building your support systems at family levels. From what I said, you have a deadly combination. I can assure you right now have a brilliant career ahead. Okay? So think of that. Think of how you build your relationships with your own family, your in-laws, your sister-in-laws. There are times when the going gets tough. The going gets tough at organizations. You need everyone pitching in for you. And here I would want to say, just before I conclude, I learned this early. I was very, very lucky to learn this early. Way back, there was this lady, Das Gupta, Indranil Das Gupta, who was one of the first women who took on leadership roles in ICICI. And I still remember that article. It was a tiny little column where she was interviewed, and she had said, the one thing I have done to be where I am was to build in my support systems. And she had this life-changing experience that Sonali had, where she had to move to Mumbai. She left her children behind. Her husband, her children stayed back. Her in-laws supported her. Sister-in-law supported her. And she spent 3 years in Mumbai doing exactly what Sonali just now has said no to, regretfully. Yeah? And she managed it, and she went on to head one of the largest banks of this country. So just opening your minds out to some thoughts is, the companies, organizations are going to do their bit. But I think it's equally the responsibility of women to find their way through. To expect special favors only delimits you. To ask for reservations is, in my view, an absolute no, you just don't get there. You just don't get there, because then it's men versus women world. Then you ask it for yourself. Yeah? So with that, I would leave that thought to you. My thought, the last sentence or thought to you is, build your own competency. Build, of course, your professional networks, and equally strengthen your family and support systems for you to be able to do, justice to both your work and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harpreet Datta, for your motivating words. So, keynote from this session is that we need to build our support system. We have to strengthen our support system, and subject clarity is this one ladder to success. And keep on moving in your life. Am I right? Absolutely. Okay. Our next speaker for the session is Professor Sapna Popli, Senior Director and Professor of Marketing, IIM Institute for Higher Education. Now, Professor Sapna Popli has handled roles and responsibility of a corporate executive, a teacher, trainer, researcher, and an academic administrator with 20 years of work experience. She is a research fellow in the area of leadership, an MBA with major in marketing, and an undergraduate degree in mathematics honors. She has offered courses in leadership, marketing, services, strategy, and marketing research. Her work has been published and presented in the areas of business education, quality in business education, learning and... Sorry, I will complete this slide.
This is very embarrassing when the students want to go.
Okay.
Sorry, I intervene like this. I think a lot of students know me here, and she's embarrassing everybody by reading out the full biography that she has. So, but thank you, Shivani. Thank you for doing it. So, being the last speaker, it's good fun because everything that needed to be covered has already been done during the day, and I can just quietly summarize. Can I have the presentation? I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but just a few things that have been highlighted during the day. And a lot of things are common. I think a lot of us started our careers at a time when there was no flexibility, and whatever we reached is possibly given all of that just because we wanted to. Or maybe we loved our jobs so much, or we loved the career that we are in, and we had families to support us, and we had mentors to support us. So I buy both the things that have been said on stage, and I've equally benefited from those by having my parents around when my children were growing up, and I could continue the 20 years that I have of career just because my parents were around to help me when my daughter was 7 and they decided to move nearby to help us. And that's the advantage only families in India have. And that's possibly one of the reasons the chart that was shown to us in a previous presentation about why flexibility matters or it doesn't matter. Since we've had supports all along, women who wanted to do have always been able to do it, despite what has not been there for them. The session was titled The Way Forward, Tools and Techniques. So some specifics as to what we can do, they have been said and shared during the day. I will just quickly take you through some of those things. Can I have the next slide, please? So what has been said, and this is available, there are 3 or 4, those who are interested and keen to know what organizations are doing. 3 or 4 organizations, Catalyst is one of them. You will find a lot of research on McKinsey, you will find a lot of research on SHRM. All this data is available, all the best practices are available. It's just about what organizations want to do and pick from there. So the first point that I want to highlight, 67% of Indian employers are struggling to fill jobs. I'm just leaving it there. There is not enough talent. Women currently make up only 23% of Indian private sector labor force. They're just 2 highlights. So women can work. They are unable to do so because there is not enough support available to them. Some of us have been able to find it. The Gen Y doesn't want to do it that way. The organizations today will need to support that. What is required are workplaces where women feel welcome. Next slide, please. Regardless of gender, future leaders in India have high career aspirations. They also value a good fit between work and personal life. So this is gender neutral. All future leaders expect life to be good, work-wise, professionally and personally. Both men and women in India value work-life fit. 97% men and 95% women rate it as very important. For more than 80%, and this is the sad part of it, for more than 80% of both women and men, the existing flexibility policies provided by their organizations did not meet their work-life needs. They're still there because they wanted to be there, but it's coming out very much now from everywhere, all aspects, everything that you read and see, that there is a scope. We've started on that path. The journey is just about, maybe 5 years back we started on these journeys. It will take some time to get there. Next, please. This is one of the studies that Hewitt had just done, and this is what they highlighted. I just wanted to focus on the right side, where top benefits that employees value: additional fixed pay, obviously, that is very obvious; higher incentive, that is also very obvious. And the third point, if you say, is the flexible work arrangements. And this is coming because of the generation that is now coming into workforce. They all value it much more than other things. For a lot of people who were in the previous generation, who've done the work, who've been there, didn't think it was there. It was one of those things which one or two organizations did, and they found it valuable. But today, it is one of the expectations that employees have. Next, please. So I'm just skipping what flexible working is. Just skip this slide, please, because we've had a full session. I've just listed it out here for what you've heard: telecommuting, flexible arrival, departure, flex time, compressed work weeks, part-time options, job sharing, enhanced maternity leaves, daycare, donating leave benefits. We've heard a description of all of that today. Next slide, please. We've been talking about some myths in the morning, and there was a myth that she described, Dr. Neeru discussing some. And these are some of the myths which I also discovered, and I thought coming from the previous generation, so I also had these myths. But the facts are different. Flexible work arrangements are still the exception, not the rule. It is a myth. For every company that does not offer flexible work options, there are 4 others that do. This is from research. Access to flexible work arrangements has no impact on aspirations. It does, unfortunately, have a high impact on aspirations. Next, please. Flex work options only matter to millennials and parents. I also thought it matters to only Gen Y and people who are young parents, but that's not a fact. It matters to everyone. Gender neutral. Next, please. This is just for the students. I don't know how many of you know. I'm assuming all of you know, but there are many students who've come back to us complaining about these things, that they did not get the maternity benefit. It is as per law. These are 3 laws which nobody can deny you. So if anybody is giving you these benefits, that is a mandate. This cannot be denied. Next, please. There are many benchmarks within Indian organizations. There are many organizations. If an organization does want to follow existing model, there are many who have done and excelled it. We heard from Mr. Dwarkanath in the morning about GlaxoSmithKline, what they've been doing since 1976. Tata's is known for it. Godrej, which is a name that many people would not have found on this list. On their company, they've had 90%, 80% men all along. It's only now, last 2-3 years, they've been actively working on getting equal number of women, and they have started with a flexible working policy. All these companies, P&G, HSBC, Infosys, next please, Hindustan Unilever, EY, and I was reading Leena Nair, what she said about HUL, what they have started, what initiatives they have done. All these organizations have had many initiatives which we've heard in this audience since morning. And these are benchmarks available to any organization that does want to adapt any of those. Next, please. So what research is saying, and what I've seen organizations and colleagues and heard from other employees and alumni who moved out. So when I did my MBA, I was 5 girls in a class of 30. There were just 5 girls that time, and of the 5 girls, I think only 2 of us are working now. The balance 3 took a backseat. Of course, all the men are working, and they are leading organizations. What has not worked really, when I speak to them and when I speak to a lot of alumni from here, so I see Sujoy, who was in the batch of 99, from his batch, I know at least 10 girls who do not work now. They are at home. And I've taught them in class. I know their capability and their potential. So when I asked them what didn't work for them, it was basically, organizations. One, of course, what she said, women don't believe in themselves. They don't ask enough. They don't seek help. I think that is That is, if you stop doing that, then you will not get the help, whether it is from family, whether it is from mentors, whether it is from organizations. I'm not saying it is the same story for everyone, but seeking help is a starting point. B, what has not really worked is organizations all know that this is possible. They're unable to implement some of these things. And implementation, the difficulty lies in an inability to define work. How do you define work? How do you measure it? If an organization is able to do it, flexibility can be built in very, very easily. And I think a few speakers in the morning also mentioned there is no one size that will fit all. Every organization will have to find a cultural fit, and so will people have to find cultural fit. Next, please. So some questions, making a flexi work program work, and this is really for organizations, for Sujoy and you here, to think about when you speak to organizations whether they really want to make it work. What does work life mean to your employees? It has to be for each organization differently. What does it mean to your employees? It doesn't mean the same that means for an IT company, for an education company, for a manufacturing company. The set of employees that work for you, each of them has a different need, and what flexibility means to them will be a definition that you will have to evolve from your own surveys. What kinds of work-life supports they need, whether they need home support, whether they need a maid at home, whether they need help, whether they need extended hours or reduced hours, it will be different. Do they align with cultural needs and norms? What are the benchmarks available? So there are benchmarks available that we know. Do these benchmarks, so we mentioned a few organizations here, we have many such examples. Do they align with the culture of your organization? Which are the ones that you want to pick up? And I truly believe what she said, that men and women are an equal party in it. So, and there is flexibility needs of men also, which we tend to ignore. A lot of time organizations tend to ignore because they are working on a diversity agenda. So they have to have X number of women employed, and therefore all their flexibility programs are weaved around women. Whereas men may have equal number of needs, and if we work together as an organization, it may be possible to work out a program that benefits the organization. Next, please. So this is just a model that I thought while I was reading what would work for any organization. The first would be like you do a training need analysis, you do a flexibility need analysis. What is it that your organization needs? What kind of flexibility will work for our organization? What is best suited for our needs? Evaluate what works for you as an employer. So as an employer, we have all kinds of organizations. We have small and medium enterprises. A large composition of the Indian organizations are family managed businesses. You have multinational corporations, all kinds of organizations, and each employer will have a different requirement, and that needs to be thought through if an employer really wants to implement the flexibility program, the context and the culture. List all programs. Whatever can be aligned best, you align best. So you have a need, you have the benchmarks, you align what works. And what I was also seeing is what doesn't work at times in flexibility programs is, one, of course, you are unable to measure work, which is a challenge. The other is communication. There is not enough communication about the benefits and also the mindset of how it will be received. A lot of speakers did mention that dropping out of career and coming back, how will I be perceived by my boss? How will I be perceived by my colleagues? What will my family say? The meaning of work in India is defined very differently from what is defined elsewhere in the world. We want to work. For a lot of individuals, especially men and women now, it is a status that you work, you go to work. So going to work for a lot of time has been, that was Gen X, then Y. For them, going to work was important. So a lot of things could not happen at that point in time. And therefore implementing, monitoring, reassessing and realigning, and then accepting it as a part of the organizational DNA. And here I mean accepting it as a mindset. What Sujoy was saying in the morning, that you will get hurt. So you accept flexibility, given that you will get hurt. I would want to say otherwise, that if an organization truly wants to implement a program, it will have to internalize that this is a part of our HR policy, HR practice. We want these 50% women to be equally capable of performing as efficiently as they were at any point in time. Next, please. So implementation is the key, and this is a survey from which Bain and Company had done some time back, and they have been able to increase the retention of women by 40% and men by 25% by effective implementation. And can you just move to the next one? Next slide, please. These are some challenges which we have discussed. So defining work and outcomes, which is a part of your performance management system, and measuring the deliverables. If these two things are done well, the rest can be done. And the third biggest challenge, which I think Mr. Dwarkanath also mentioned in the morning, or somebody else, that culture eats strategy for breakfast, as said by Peter Drucker. So if the culture is not accepting, it will not work. So this is all flexibility is a strategy, but if your organization's culture does not accept it, if the mindsets do not change, it will not work. Next, please. And I'm quoting the Bain partner, what she said. The biggest reason given for not taking advantage of these models is fear of losing the respect of one's supervisor and or peers. So organizations which have, we saw a slide which said all the Nordic countries have about 84% implemented flexibility, and still it is not taken because of these fears and mindsets that we live with. Next, please. I'm just moving to the next slide. Move to the next slide, please. And I did read Lean In, and I was equally impressed with what she said, because you can relate to everything that is being said. And what she says in conclusion is a truly equal world would be when there are equal number of women running our countries, our companies, and equal number of men taking care of homes. That would be a true balance. That's what she says. Next, please. So I'm going to leave you here, but what I wanted to leave you with was 3 things that I've taken from today's session. One, for men. One lesson for men. I don't know whether you want to take it as a lesson, but I think men could take it as a lesson. One, respect the women who are with you, whether it is your daughter, your wife, friends, colleagues. Have respect for them. And I think that if you have that respect, everything else falls in place. For women, believe in yourself. You have the confidence, you have the ability, seek help, have your mentoring systems, support systems in place, be there to say it all and do it, and you can all reach where you want to reach. For organizations, there is enough available. There are enough models available. There has to be a mindset, a culture, and good intention to implement it. Thank you very much.
Thoughts and data with us. Now I would like to invite Mr. Kamal Singh, Director General, National Human Resource Development Network, for conclusion. Mr. Kamal Singh was earlier with All India Management Association, IMA, the apex body of management profession in India, as Director, Center for Management Development. During his stint in IMA, he has handled a variety of assignments and has been instrumental for launching many new initiatives. Some of the key areas handled by him were management education, management development programs, both in India and globally, membership services, alumni relations, personnel and administration, publications, national competitions and awards, industry academia, and government interface.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, Professor Sapna Popli, the Director of ILM Lodi Road, my great well-wisher Sonali Dua, Harti Datta, Anjali Nigam, and of course Shivani, and my dear faculty and budding managers. Good evening. It's a pleasure and privilege to be here, and all the more when ILM had sought our help to put this program together, and as a part of NHRDN mandate, I think we have also recognized the need of building capacities, capability building, as much as we can reach out. And what could have been better when we start with the business schools, you bring the challenge there itself and address it. So it's a pleasure and privilege to be here, and must thank ILM team led by Sapna ji and Sanyukta ji for doing this initiative. And I know for sure that how difficult or challenging it is to put these things, especially when you see so many programs and conferences happening day and out. So it's a great feeling that you could do this. Heartiest congratulations. Having said that, I just heard of presentation by Professor Sapna, and let me confess that all that I wanted to share, my closing remarks have already been said. So I will not like to be repetitive in the interest of your time because you had a long day. I would like to touch upon the 5 findings that NHRDN did in organizing such program on its platform. We have also taken this mandate in NHRDN. I think both of them are a part of our core committee. And they are, in addition to organizing the content, designing, roundtable, competitions, or a summit, we also did a survey. And the survey is actually nothing but what again Sapnaji mentioned here. There were 5 things that came out very separately, very distinctly rather. When we think of the diversity, we think of level playing field and opportunities for both the men and women folks. I think if we need to do something significantly higher what we are now, these 5 things need to be kept in mind. There are several things. I think I will just touch upon what this survey was talking about. One point that was very, very higher in our survey, I would say if I have to rate out of 10, that 8 people would have said it is the mindset. Despite or in spite of so much development post-globalizations, yet I think there's a great need to change the mindset, and especially the men folks. To the very fact that we have to recognize that women can contribute to what men can do, even many times better than men. So this thought came very significantly in our studies. So there is lots of effort required to gender sensitizations, and if you look at only metros, you may find something little bit satisfying, but if you look at beyond rural areas, I think the way things are, I think a lot more has to be done. The second point that came out in the study was the women are little shy of networking. So networking was one of the hindrance of moving forward in the ladder towards contribution of their not only career but the organization as well. So how do companies can create opportunities or enable women to also look at the possibilities of giving the impression of level playing field, and if they can perhaps do, because they have an equal responsibility at home, because the time the networking will happen, perhaps they don't find enough encouragement for the organizations or even for themselves. The challenges at home are much signifying more. So the networking one was hindering them. Second was, as again Sapnaji mentioned about the conducive work environment. When we work in our today's, whether it's a multinational or it is the Indian company or MSME or even NGO, all the organization, maybe you can leave out the 100 top organizations, this culture may be there, but still if you look at how do we enable them to create and contribute towards the growth of the organization and enable them to grow in their careers, I think a lot more to be designed. And you have talked about flexible careers, flexible work environment or flexible timings. I think these are all part of this. How do we, and even as a superior, if there is a man as a superior, how do we see that women can be enabled? I just share one of my colleagues who works with me, Isha. She has joined and she comes, and our office is in Gurgaon, and she comes from Roni. And let me honestly confess, it is a big challenge for us to report for the time at 10 o'clock. there are so many problems. So what we have done for her is simply that, okay, you can come about post office timing, we cannot change the 10 o'clock, but you can surely, if you are coming 1 hour late, you have a flexibility or even to stay for half an hour, 1 hour more. Or even there are opportunities where there is a work, we create such opportunity where she can feel, yes, I am able to even contribute some time from home as well. So as an organization, with those kind of flexible approach towards women workforce is taken, I think they will perhaps do well. And the fact is, most of the time you find, and still some organization, it is seen more of a harassment. The next point that I would like to say that many times you must have seen the women themselves also lack of, this is number 5 points, lack of self-confidence. Somewhere along the line they progress very hard in the as they go along at the manager level, general manager level, but later on I think in the kind of growth they make it up to general manager or mid-level career, they are not able to make it thereafter. So there are reasons for it, but if the women themselves also recognize that yes, there is a, and they have given a level playing field opportunity as well, so they see that possibility, I think perhaps the not only organization will gain, but then themselves you will see they will also moving up the ladder and making a difference. And in the last few years, there has been significant change in our approach towards this particular theme, and you see many such women now taking center stage, contributing, and I think we feel very proud of it. Rather, we see that so many inspiring stories coming now, and I have every belief that as we move on along in our journey of making India different, bigger and better, truly ahead of many other economies, I think this particular will be one differentiator perhaps where we need to address, and I'm sure we'll do that. So these are few of my closing remarks. I don't want to appear to be getting you delayed. This is one attempt because some of people who have attended this program for a day, you must have got some input, as Sapnaji mentioned, that at least from here you can move to the next level, and you have enough idea what could be the way forward. And so learning is not a one-day opportunity or even 1 month or 1 year, it is a continuous journey. And with that note, I would like to once again thank you and congratulate you for putting this program together. And I'm sure anything that we would like to do together, I think NHRD will not be far away. Thank you very much.
So I open the floor for question and answer. If anyone has question, please you can just ask from the panelists. We will be able to entertain only one question. Yes, sir.
Is there any work being done about ROI?
There is enough report. There is a report on McKinsey. You can read that. There are 2 reports actually. I can forward them to you. Where they're measuring actually
Sorry, I'm very tempted to say something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
This is an issue that doesn't deserve an ROI question on it. It's about just about equal opportunity in the world. I think it's far bigger than how much money you put in and how much money you get out of that. It's about an opportunity to 50% of our population not getting equal opportunity at work. I think it's about that. I see it as a larger issue than just, okay, sure, as at an organizational level, that ROI of all of that is important, but I do think it's a larger question. And it's about women gaining confidence to be take a place in society where they rightfully belong, and that's the way I see that.
If you look at the talent gap, if you just look at it from that perspective, that there is a talent gap with 80% of them still not being able to fill that kind of talent, and if there is a woman who is equally capable but is unable to do because there is not the environment to do. Even if we look from that perspective without quantifying it, there is evidence that it will yield results, but there is not quantitative evidence also.
Intent and impact both matter.
I
think now the situation is that we are able to attract women in the workforce, but we're not able to sustain women at the middle level and the senior level. And this exact question was asked back in the US as well to our CEO, who said, we've been investing in this program for 20-25 years. Does it still make sense? We already have 50% leadership even at the senior levels. In the US, we've reached that. Does it make sense? And the answer around the table was, yes, we still need it, because there's still new people joining us and the culture needs to remain as robust. What we did change was, change it from a women initiative to an inclusion diversity initiative. So it just didn't focus on women, and it specifically didn't focus on women, like that discount card. It changed from enabling professionals to be able to have a flex work, to be able to ask what they want, to be able to work from home, to be able to be there for their wives, parents, whoever, to be able to spend time with the children, to be able to dial up or dial down because they don't want to travel that much. So it became more of an inclusion, diversity things. And the more we research, the more we have roundtables, we identify pockets of teams where the diversity is not reached that level and it's impacting the performance. Managers are still making decisions of having women on the team or not because they know they're going to get married or they're going to have children. And we see a vast difference, back to your point, among managers who have their working women in their life as a mother, sister or a wife. Their opinion are much different. They're more flexible about women going to pick their children from the daycare or taking maternity leave or being staffed on a project to be able to work from home if they're not required in office. Then a man who's not exposed to that culture. So that is the thing for us to invest in, because as we grow, we're like 25,000 people right now. Even if there are like 10% people like that who are imbibing that culture, it can be very hurtful to the clients that we're serving. You getting my point? If I'm on that project and if I want leave and I'm not being given leave, or I want to go for maternity and I decide not to work, who gets impacted? The client gets impacted, right? But it's happening because the manager is not cognizant of the fact that how his inability to understand the situation can impact that situation. So the whole vicious circle is still around. It's just that we need to keep that culture alive. And it's not important whether we get the ROI. It's important that we have equal opportunity, not just for women, but for men as well. When we launch programs, we realize that men are jumping onto it, then women. Because men are burning out. They're not saying it, but they are burning out. My husband used to travel Gurgaon, Noida for 4 years. He was burning out. And he wanted to be with the child more than, I was waiting to be with the child. So I think the issue of burning out is in both the places. It's just that if the company provides that kind of a setup, it's more easy for the professional to have a long, successful career. And for the company to have great business results at the end of the day. So long answer to your...
Even you look at the developed economies vis-a-vis the underdeveloped or developing economies. The one point stands very clear that wherever the contribution of women has been recognized, these economies as a whole also have done well. I see the case of Norway, for instance. If you look at the entire GDP of their country or in their progress or success, there are more women working than men are contributing. Not necessarily only an index in working or vis-a-vis non-working. Contribution is much more than men in terms of their growth. But surely, I think we have to catch up as India as a country is concerned, and the ROI per se, I think it's certainly a question for research in future to come.
Yeah, but one very important research which has been happening is that diversity leads to innovation and creative workplaces. So I think at the end of the day, yes.
World that we talk about is also a bit of was an eye-opener last year for me. We are a German multinational, and I was on one of my trips to, we had this international HR conference. We have people from all over coming in across the world, and we had HR heads and HR colleagues from across coming in, and we had this discussion. And I was intrigued and both surprised that the Western woman in the Western world felt something similar. So if you thought it was very Indian and it was an Indian mentality, it was a wake-up call for me saying, oh guys, oh sorry, but this is happening across the world, even in the Western world. In private conversations, women did admit that, oh, what are you talking about? Even here, if they had to lay off, the women may be the first ones whose jobs would get targeted. Which was like, oh my God, I thought we thought that you had a glamorous world, you had everything right and fixed up. And we were the ones who were struggling with this issue. So it's, I think, and then another colleague, and this one was a male colleague of mine who helped me understand, who said, so when I joined this organization, he said, oh, welcome, it's nice to have a woman on board. And I was like, and I happen to be the only woman, okay? In quite a few levels there, I am the only woman there. And then I have someone, he said, welcome having you on. It's a woman, and and he said, by the way, we didn't hire you because you were a woman, because we thought you were competent enough to do the job. It's steel industry that we work in. Right? So I said, okay, good. But this conversation left me very, uncomfortable. I mean, why do you welcome me because I'm a woman? I mean, am I not competent enough to do the job? And in a private conversation, I asked him, Mr. Paswal, why did you say that? Why did you say that welcome as a woman? I said, we just have more diversity, we have more color around it, and I insist on wearing colorful sarees, okay? I refuse to wear browns and grays and blues to work. It's my need to identify myself as a woman. And then he said, you know what, it's the perception that the world carries. You need to help to change it. And I think that's somewhere the key point is there. There are mindsets that people have. We as women have to equally work to change it. Organizations enable, build platforms, but all of that is going to go for a toss if we as women don't actively change it. And I think for all men, and I've seen one argument with a male colleague stops the whole discussion. You just ask him, if this happened to your wife, how would you deal with it? And then the conversation stops and they say, oh yes ma'am, okay, and we're done with it. So I think it's a multiple world, a more complex world. Everybody needs to push their weight, is what I've picked up.
So we all learn through experiences, and this session was full of personal experiences, and I am very sure whosoever is sitting in the hall, they are learning a lot from experiences. And now on behalf of ILM, I would like to thank Mr. Kamal Singh, Dr. Anjali Nigam, Ms. Sonali Dua, Ms. Harpreet Datta, Professor Sapna Podli, and this one tea arrangement is there in forum. But before dispersing, I would like to stand for National Anthem.
आशीष मांगे